First off, let me introduce our panelists, starting with Jason Liggett, who you heard from at the top. Jason is a producer, director, screenwriter. He's responsible for the series channeling, and I think he's raised the bar on the visual beauty that appears every day on the Gaia network. Another of our panelists is Helané Wahbeh, who is the Director of Research at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, IONS, which is absolutely one of the premier research facilities worldwide studying ESP, clairvoyance, parapsychology. Matías Stefano is a world-renowned channeler. He speaks internationally, and he is the host of the Gaia series Initiation. And Laura Alden Kamm is an author, a researcher, and again, an internationally respected and world-renowned medical intuitive. We're delighted to have you all here. And I'm going to toss out the first question. This is from Gloria Jean, and this is to the entire panel. Can anyone learn to channel? Is it an innate gift, or is this something for which the individual can train? Anybody wants to kick off?
I'll start it. I absolutely believe anyone can channel. Sheila said it earlier in the documentary, we are already wired for it. Our intuitive system is a system, and it's a natural part of who we are. I think it takes practice. It takes a contemplative mind, so you actually know your own voice inside, as well as perhaps, let's just say, the voice of your own soul. So you have that identification with your own spirit as well as your own personality, and then just practice and document and work with it. Again, everybody has the ability to listen to that which is outside of themselves and listen to that which is inside as well. And that's what we get to do.
And another question to the whole panel from Suzanne, who asks, when channeling, is there any risk that a dark consciousness can enter your psyche or take over your being?
I would like to say about that too. Well, regarding the first question, I would like to say that channeling sometimes is kind of like when you go to sleep and you have a dream. So to practice channeling is like trying to practice to dream being awakened. So your brain is trying to find information that is around in the global mind. So when you open your imagination, you able the mind to download channel information that is around, and that is part of the channeling process that we can do playing every day. And remember that there's no bad or good beings around. It's just low information or high information related to frequencies. So there are some informations that for us are bad, but for some others are not. So it is not exactly like there are bad beings that can come inside of you, but they can hurt you if you are not ready to channel that kind of information. Would be kind of like that. So I wouldn't say there's bad or good, but you have to always take care of your high vibration in order to not be harmed by those low vibrations.
I will second that. After I've worked with Matías since, I guess 2018 is when we started working together, Matías. And that's always a question of the good and the bad. But when the point that I really want throughout this series is the power within of going through our heart to connect at all times, and all of the beautiful messages throughout bring us back to that center. And Matías has taught me so much about it, and Dr. Helané, she has a lot to say about that kind of protection as well. So I'll let you say something.
Thank you. I also wanted to speak to that previous question too about can anyone channel, and I would agree and hold the premise that anyone can channel, that it's an innate capacity that we all have, and that the way it shows up for us may be unique depending on the person. And I know this documentary was really kind of more focused on what I call trance channeling, which is kind of a specific type. And I also believe that anyone who wants to and believes they can trance channel can learn how to do it. And there's organizations that teach that. I, in fact, learned through a hypnosis method that supported me to learn how to trance channel, and that I do believe anyone can do that. And the studies show us that there's a couple predictors. So one is belief, actually. The strongest predictor for having these experiences and doing well when we test for it in the lab is that you believe they exist and that you can do it. And the second strongest is meditation. So having some meditative or concentrative type practice also supports that as well. But you asked me about this negative entity piece, which I agree is a very, very common question. And, you know, growing up, my grandfather would always say, protect yourself in white light, and there's nothing that can harm you. And I really resonated with Matías's description of that as well, that there's no, you know, bad guys or good guys. It's all energetics and information and how we receive and translate it.
A very interesting question from Debbie for the panel. And Laura, maybe you'd like to begin with the response to this one. I'm going to read it directly. Debbie asks, if we're all one, why do people manifest so differently? One, an artist, another, a musician. Should we all have the same capacity?
Great question. And it really is about the experience of different levels of perception. The artist is different than the musician, yet they're both artistic, right? You can be a writer, you can do anything you want, but it's the lenses through which we express our creativity, our critical thinking, our intuitive wisdom that makes us all so very unique. Not just the physicality of our bodies, but it's the way information comes to us and through us. There are many pipelines and perceptual lenses just of intuition alone. Many of you already know that. Feeling, empathy, seeing, hearing, feeling, gustatory, olfactory. We can perceive things that are unseen, and that's the gift of intuition. So it's the perceptual lenses that we all get to, I believe, choose, because we don't come here without knowing what we are as a soul and some inclinations throughout our life of who we're here to be. So it's these lenses of perception that give us our beautiful uniqueness.
Now, here is a fascinating question from Jessa, and several other viewers have echoed this question. She writes that about 20 years ago, she was connected with a channel and had a wonderful experience, but lost the connection and wonders what steps can be taken to restore it, to recover it. Anyone would like to respond?
I wanted to say something from the other one, which is in order to have an idea of being one, what we usually make a mistake, I think, a conceptual mistake of being one and being the same, which is not like that. Being one, in order to think about oneness, is like think about your body and every cell that is inside your body. You can consider yourself like a person, like me. I am Matías, but actually the reason why I exist is because there's a group of cells channeling the information of the heart, others channeling information of the liver, others channeling the information of the knees. So if there are no different, it's like one only being that has been reflected into many shapes, into many aspects of the oneness, and they all represent a grid of beings that are only one, but the existence of that being is because of the difference that this only that these cells can share to one another. So that's why there's no universe if there are no different cells doing different things. That's the difference between one and the same. So that's why.
And I'd like to add one more thought, if I may. As you develop your intuitive skills and they get integrated more within your sense of oneness and spirituality, you start developing levels of awareness. People talk about different dimensions, and to me, they're not different stages or rooms in a house or something like that. They're different places of awareness. And over time with development, and I agree, meditation is a critical point for that development. You become aware of multiplicities and simultaneity. So you can understand, you can be focused on one thing, but also understand the multiplicities that feed into that unification. So I just wanted to add that too, give you something to work for.
And Helané, maybe you could speak directly to Jess's question, since you've studied so many different channelers in a clinical setting. She felt she lost connection and was curious about steps that could restore it.
Absolutely. And I don't want to avoid her question, but I too want to talk to this oneness piece because I think it's so important. And I loved both Matías's and Laura's explanation. And I have another metaphor that might be helpful for people. So you imagine the electromagnetic spectrum as one thing, and it's this huge range of frequencies. But you look at each one of those frequencies, say the visible light band, and red looks very, very different than violet, but yet it's still on the same one spectrum. So I love the body metaphor. Here's another electromagnetic spectrum metaphor for the audience to kind of grasp onto, to understand this oneness and individuation piece. In terms of feeling like you lost a connection, the first thing that comes to mind is to perhaps set the intention to strengthen your channeling muscle, if you will, and to invite yourself to let go of connecting with that specific being or entity or this, past relationship that you had. Not that that can't be reconnected again, but to start with the intention of just strengthening your channeling muscle, to set aside some time, even if it's just a few minutes a day, to get still, quiet, think about those intentions and create a practice for yourself. And there's so many different ways to do this, paths, tools. Find one that really resonates with you as best you can, letting go of the outcome of what that looks like. And if that relationship with that previous supposed entity is supportive to you, it will rise up again. And perhaps it's going to look completely different with the ultimate intention of having it be supportive for you. That's my 2 cents on the question. And maybe someone else would add more.
I would like to add a personal experience about this connection. I had this connection many times in my life, like sometimes has been years. For example, when I was 19 years old, I've been all my teenagehood connected. And suddenly when I was 19, I disconnected like this from one day to another. And I had no idea what was happening. It's been like that for two years mostly. And suddenly when I reconnected again, I asked my guys, why did you do that? Why you left me alone? And they said, well, you needed to learn how to wash your clothes, how to pay your bills, how to do your bed, and these kind of things that otherwise you wouldn't do. So basically, sometimes when we are connected to something higher, we forget about the normal things. And sometimes this higher consciousness allows us to experience the channeling of something different that for us is the normal life, but that they are also the anchor. These activities, they are also the anchor for a higher channeling process in the future. So I wouldn't be able to channel higher beings if I wouldn't practice how to do my human stuff here and be more grounded. So, so as a personal experience, sometimes don't be afraid of the disconnection. Just keep the practice, as Helané said, but don't be afraid of not being connected, because someday suddenly it will be like too much. So you have to be grounded.
Magda asks a really interesting question that echoes questions asked by some of the other viewers. I'll read it directly. This is to the whole panel. How can I recognize the voice thoughts of the being I am channeling from my own voice and thoughts? Jason.
I can't necessarily answer this, but I can say that that was one of my biggest questions kind of going in, is how do you differentiate between, voices in your head, an entity? How do you do it? How do you practice that? And again, of all of the different questions I asked all of the different people, it comes back to what Matías just said. Get back to the basics, get back to ground, get back to center, so that Laura said a beautiful piece, and I'm swirling in episodes right now, so I can't name the episode, but she said, the power of meditation, the power of just knowing the antics of your own mind, I think is, of all of the spiritual teachings and all of the channeled texts that have influenced my spiritual journey, if you don't get back to the basics, it's really hard to differentiate any of the voices, whether that's in your professional life or you're channeling, practicing your communicating with higher beings, whatever it is. If you don't have that grounded center, it's going to be really hard. So,
and remember that you are always channeling yourself. So it's important to understand that this separation of channeling a being or channeling myself, or is my voice, that's something that usually the culture tried to create in order for made us feel insecure or crazy, like, oh, it's just your voice in your head. And yeah, it is. it's yourself, and that's the first step in order to listen the other aspects of yourself. So it doesn't matter if it's your voice, if it's your inner self. Just keep on that until you start listening others, and there's no need to, but it can eventually happen when you allow yourself to listen first to yourself, not only others.
Yeah, I agree. And if I can jump in here also, I agree. I think it's like Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music started at the very beginning, that song, okay? And it's a very good place to start. And so know the voice of your own self and the narratives that you tell yourself that aren't necessarily the most authentic part of you. So you have to understand your own chatter and your own stories, and then really get introduced to your own soul. Listen to that higher voice that's yours. It will have a certain tone. It will come from a certain direction. It may rise up from your heart. It may come from behind you. You don't know yet until you practice. And the same is true when another being, another force of the universe comes a calling, and it may have a different syntax, a different tempo, a different tonality of its voice. So there really are a lot of nuances that aren't so subtle, really, that you'll be able to pay attention to. But start at the very beginning. Start with yourself. Know your own tone. Know your own voice.
Absolutely. If I can just add a couple more pieces to that, I'm totally aligned with everything that other panelists have shared thus far. And I'll just again highlight this piece of your own personal growth process, to process the ego, to know your ego, to see the personality that's kind of in this mix. And then I will often share with people, why are we so stuck on the source? What is the attachment to what the source is? Not that I don't think it's interesting or important to know, but ultimately, with our objective tools right now, we can't prove exactly what that source is. So I invite people to just set that aside for a little bit and focus on the content. What is the content that's coming in? Is it useful? Is it helpful? Is it actionable? Is it relevant to you? Does it light you up? Have you feel expansive? Does it lead you to synchronicity and opportunity? So that's my invitation, is say, okay, it could be my higher self. It could be a non-dimensional being. It could be my ego. Regardless, what is it actually saying? And is that meaningful and useful to me?
Mhm.
Yeah,
I think
Chris, oh, sorry, please, Jason.
That's okay. Just to top it off. There's definitely an argument of ego versus higher self versus, and looking into all the channel texts again, A Course in Miracles, I think, was a great way of helping people or helping you understand the antics of ego. And it really, it boils down to bringing it back again to the self and grounding in the self. So I just wanted to cap that off with, it can be a hard thing at first. And then it's just like practice, like they're all saying, just get to the center.
Now, Chris asks a very blunt question, the kind I like. We're here to exchange, and he directs this to Matías. He asks, Matías, have you seen the future? If so, what's going to happen to humanity?
Which future?
Not to put you on the spot.
That would be the question. Which future? It's once I explained this, the future has two different points of view being seen. One as the very origin of everything, and the other one as the different expressions and expansions of the highest frequency that we cannot hear, we cannot perceive as humans. So when you pitch one of those frequencies, you can only see one of those options, but you cannot see the whole, because the actual future is going to be built according to a network in which we are all connected, acting in the present. So the future is not determined as only one, it's determined as the whole. So it's not possible to say this is going to be the future, but you can have clues or ideas of what is going to happen according to the actions of what people is doing now. So I could talk about stuff that I have seen from the future, but it won't be actually the real future. It will be just a perception according to how humanity is right now. So I don't know specifically what should I say according to the future. But I can say, for example, that we have been all the process that we have been living the past 3-4 years. We have been receiving information of that from longer time. So, but it never was like what actually really happened. For example, according to what happened in 2020, 2021, I have been receiving information since I was 12 years old that those 2 years were supposed to be the years where humanity should be connected on a meditation. So they all must be thinking about the same thing and connected within. It turned out to be that everyone had to be inside their houses for and thinking about the same thing. But so that's why the idea of what is happening is not what is actually going to happen. That's why we can have ideas of the future, but not the actual facts.
Mm-hmm. Mary asks a super practical question, and Laura, maybe you could start off the answers to this one. She writes, when I meditate and suddenly an answer to a perplexing problem comes to me, is this channeling?
I would say you could call it that. When we meditate, what happens to our bodies, particularly our nervous system? It calms down. And the nervous system, all parts of it, vagal, polyvagal system, enteric nervous system, peripheral, myofascial, the brain and the spinal cord, all of that's part of our intuitive system. And when we're relaxed in a meditative or contemplative state, the channels open up. So yes, that is the way you do it. It's really not that complicated. It really isn't. And it seems supernatural, but it's not. It's very practical. It's very practical. So yeah, you can get any answer you want. All you have to do is ask.
Anybody else want to speak to that? Okay. Kelly asks, how do you learn to trust the information you receive when channeling? Anybody who wants to jump in, please.
I can speak to that a little bit. You know, I mentioned in my previous answer about actionable and relevant. To me, it really is all about the practice and micro steps. So if I receive a piece of information, I'm going to give you a really simple example. Let's say I have a health issue. I ask a question about specific foods that are going to support me to release these symptoms. And I get information, okay, I need to stop eating dairy. And then I'm like, all right, I'm going to give it a try. And I stop. And then I feel better and I feel lighter and I have more energy. Then that's a mini example, a mini practice of learning how to trust the information that I'm receiving. I don't start out channeling and say, okay, should I quit my job, get a divorce, and move to Australia? That's not like the beginner channeling question, right? We start with small, micro questions that we can actually act on. And then the more you act on it, the more you get positive feedback. It's like, wow, I'm actually getting something. So that's my advice, to learn how to really trust that. And I'll say personally, I know for myself, I have a really hard time doing what I call, normal channeling about something that I'm really attached to, or I have an emotional charge to, because I can't be a clear channel for myself in that moment because I have too much wrapped up in it. And so for me, having these kind of smaller, less charged things to work on builds up my trust for those bigger questions.
Muhammad asks a really fascinating question. And Jason, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to respond first to Muhammad. Can we use channeling to contact extraterrestrial beings?
I definitely have seen it. I mean, definitely seen it several times, but working with Bashar and Theo, there is no doubt about it that it is a different. The interviews were completely different, just coming from the person on the other side of the camera. The rapid fire of information that happens, the change of energy and frequency in the room, especially when Sheila connects to Theo, I've experienced it with Matías several times throughout initiation, throughout Journey of Remembering, which some of that stuff was in this episode. So I really have seen it, and I've been influenced by a lot of channeled messages where they are coming from what we consider on Earth extraterrestrial beings, and then you go back to the discernment. How do you know? It all comes down to what is. It goes back to what Helané was saying. What is the message? Is it serving and helping others, or is it trying to get something? Then you start saying, who is actually communicating here?
Brandy asks a fascinating question, and Helané, maybe you can kick this response off since this might intersect with some of your research. Brandy writes, are schizophrenics supersensitives who channel or interact with various entities, frequencies, but do so without awareness or understanding of what they are seeing and hearing?
I love that question.
Mhm.
I'll answer something that they didn't ask, which is channeling some sort of mental health pathology? Because that often comes up for people. Oh, I'm hearing voices or I'm seeing things, etc. Most of the studies that have formally evaluated this, in general, people who channel do not have pathological levels of psychotic symptoms. In fact, they are high functioning, they have great, wonderful lives, and they perceive channeling as positive impact for themselves. Now, this person's asking about schizophrenics, people who have extreme psychotic symptoms that prevent them from, having a normal life. I personally am very curious if that's true. I would hypothesize that yes, many schizophrenics are actually just perceiving non-physical beings all around them and having conversations with them. And there's also many practitioners who work with people in terms of non-physical being attachments, or some people call it possessions. And I'm very curious to actually do a study where we do these clearings and releases for people to see if it improves their symptoms. So the short answer is, I don't know. I do hypothesize that yes, it's true, but as far as I know, it has not been formally studied.
May I jump in on this?
Please.
In my work as a medical intuitive, I have worked with this in short term meaning a year or several years. And what I have found as the end story, if you will, is that those who channel do not have the brain challenges that schizophrenics do have. And of course, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, but I've had 40 years in this field. And so what I have noticed, that those that have a tendency to have perhaps a development of schizophrenia are starting out in that potential channeling point of view, but there's an inherent or genetic weakness within the structure of the brain. Because channeling is the mind, yes, the information comes through the nervous system, the language, texture of the language, anything else that's associated with the language that is being channeled down from the mind comes through the nervous system and then ends up in the cranium. It ends up in the brain, where language and discernment and description come forward. But that doesn't mean the channeler has a dysfunction in the brain itself. Whereas in my experience, schizophrenia, there's a neurochemical imbalance, there's cellular imbalance, there's synaptic imbalance, and the different lobes of the brain are affected. So I just wanted to add that piece for that question.
And Kelly asks the panel in general, and this is a really interesting question because it touches on some critical psychical research. Do you think animals channel sometimes? For example, when people feel they are receiving signs from a loved one who has died and they keep seeing dragonflies or cardinals or butterflies, etc. Are animals used to reach out, interact, and do animals have some sort of a channeling capacity? Anybody who'd like to address it?
I'll jump in real quick. The answer to me is yes, based on experience with myself and others. When I died, I watched a scene in my life where there was a robin I wanted as a pet when I was 5, and I stole an egg from a nest and tried to hatch it, and the poor thing died. So I'm watching all of that from the other side in the life review. And when I returned from being dead, and then had surgery, and I was in neuro ICU, a robin came to the windowsill. This is in Ohio in early February with snow on the ground. Robins don't like that. And it had an albino head, and the ICU nurses told me, they wheeled my bed actually over to the window and said, this guy's been here for 3 days and 3 nights while you've been in neuro ICU. And I've had clients and just other personal experiences with cardinals and dragonflies. So yes, they are symbols. And even the Bible talks about robins being angels.
We have to remember that every living thing, if it has a polarity of positive and negative energy through protons, neutrons, electrons, they are all channelers. So a tree is a channeler, an animal is a channeler, stones are channeling, everything is channeling. We just add to it the human consciousness, but everything actually is processing information, is allowing information to go through. So all the data, information that is around every realm is channeling all that information in their own awareness or in their own consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
I would just having been around dogs, they're a very clear example of reacting and feeling on the energy, and they will shift and change based on your energy. So I've always seen animals as being, master channelers with instincts and understanding the energy fields around and how they interact with others. So I would just say, don't know, but I would say they're tuned in.
Just add 2 more pieces to that. One is that there's a wonderful after-death communication database where cases are being collected from all over the world around that. And many of those cases include animals. And then much of the audience may be familiar with Rupert Sheldrake's work with animals who know when their owners are coming home. So that's another wonderful example of that.
Mm. Yeah, and if I may second that, anyone who hasn't checked out Rupert's work on questions of animal instinct and clairvoyance, it's extraordinary. And he's dedicated so many years of effort to it. Vanessa asks, very practical question. What would you say is going on for someone who can't remember dreams, or the dream state seems black or blocked? Anybody? Matías?
Oh, when the dreams are blocked. Well, not all the people have come here to connect with that capacity or that information of the dreams. Sometimes it's some periods, sometimes is the place. When maybe in the place where you're sleeping, there is a current of underwater that grabs all the energy of your house or the room, and so it channels it away, and that also cuts a lot the channeling information within your body. That's a fancy answer that I don't know, but sometimes when you change, maybe you have experienced that you go to a different place and you suddenly start dreaming or having much more perceptions than you do in your house. And sometimes that happens because you are in an environment that is taking all the energy away from you. But maybe you can try, for example, drinking more water helps the connection. I usually said this advice of drinking a lot of water when you go to sleep, because usually when people is awakening in the other day, maybe you're not dreaming, but in the middle of your sleeping process, you're dreaming a lot, because it's not like we are dreaming all the time when you sleep. It's just connections that you do in the middle of the night, sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for 1 minute, and you think that you have been sleeping during the whole night, and it's just a synapses connection of a fraction of seconds. So it happened many times during the night, but when you awake, maybe you haven't had that for 1 hour or 2 hours. So that's why you don't remember anything. So maybe if you drink a lot of water, it moves a lot of information and also wakes you up right in the moment when you are sleeping, usually. So that's when you have the will of going to pee, sometimes you remember better.
All right.
I just want to add something. Perhaps you're a daydreamer. And what I mean by that is when you wake up in the morning, have a journal next to your bed. And before you really push through your day or start it, just close your eyes and breathe and meditate for a moment or two and say something simple like, what would you like me to know? And go to your heart first, and talk to your heart. What do you want me to know? Perhaps you're resting and need to rest at night. I know from traditional Chinese medicine that if dreams are too frequent or wild, insofar as the Easter bunny, moves into your dining room or something in a dream, you've got a little bit of an imbalance going on. So bless your sleep, I say, and see if you're a daydreamer. Write it down in a journal when you're awake. Be a wakeful dreamer.
Now, Selena asks a very broad question, but I think it's actually the question that brought us all to this event this evening. What is the purpose of life and the purpose of channeling? How can I know my own life purpose? Who should I put on the spot? Jason, how can we know our life purpose?
I will always say this, I think. Your heart guides you and connects you with your life purpose, with the passion. I mean, Laura said this. Everyone has said this throughout the series and in all of my research. Your heart guides you to your purpose, and then you will be given the tools you need to fulfill the purpose, but without going here. It's a very long and windy road. If you are always here, it's going to be really hard to figure out the purpose. And that would be, I feel like, how I ended up in this position, being able to work with these beautiful minds and being able to put this show together. If I didn't go here, there's no way I would be standing here. So that's my 2 cents.
Maybe there's a way. I usually go to the etymology of the words to understand some stuff. And purpose means something that is put there ahead. So it's put ahead. That's what purpose means, which the actual meaning means that someone put it there, and usually it's yourself. I put it there. So it means that you settle a goal, you settle a purpose. So it means that actually the purpose is not in front of you or ahead, but actually you determine that from the point of view where you are. In other ways of saying this is like when you buy a phone, for example, and you don't know how to use the phone, for sure the first thing that you know is to communicate, to contact others. So the purpose where you get it is because of that. But how do you get to that connection? For that to happen, well, you need to know how to use the phone, to learn the tools of how it's made, the phone, because the tools for the connection is not ahead. The purpose is something that you set as a goal, but actually the way in which that is going to happen is in your hands. It's already there, it's in you. So it's not what is the goal in the future, it's about what is my design that allows me to do what I'm going to do. So a way to do that, for example, is through astrology, family tree, family constellation, trying to understand your genetics, your how your system works, your chart of birth. So that those are the tools that can help you to understand why have you been designed like that. So this is your design. So this is a design for a purpose. So when you study your story from the past and the present, can tell you exactly what is the purpose. But what is going to happen is different, because you can call your mom, you can call the president. So the communication that is going to happen is going to be different according to what is your decision, how to use it. Whether you are all the time in the social media or reading a website, I don't know. You have different kinds of purposes of how to do it, but studying the design, the human design that you have, can help you understand where to go.
I would just quickly add that one of the most exciting things about channeling for me is that it really demonstrates for us that we are that our consciousness is non-local. And to me, this relates to our purpose. So for me as a human, my kind of global general purpose is to understand that I'm not just this body, that I'm not limited to this Helané, that my consciousness goes so much further beyond that. And to me, that just came up for me as related to purpose and the exciting aspect that channeling shows us that so clearly.
Mm-hmm. And to also add that oftentimes that which we push away and it keeps coming back like a boomerang is part of our purpose, because the purpose is so deep embedded within our hearts. And it's a multiplicity. You can have many talents that interweave with the purpose. It can be local, it can be regional, it can be a global purpose, and you will know which one it is. Where are you more comfortable? And if something keeps coming and you keep pushing it away, try not to push it away and take a good look at it, feel it out, and go for it, because that's usually a dovetail to your purpose. And we have many, as the other panelists have said, we have many.
And feeling it, as you said, and
Yeah.
you echo it through the series as well, but feeling our way through lives, not always thinking our way through
Yes.
lives. That to me is the ultimate answer throughout spiritual searching of finding your purpose, is to truly go where you're guided.
Mm-hmm.
Laura asks the panel, how do we work with channeling a positive being versus a negative entity? Does our present polarity or vibration attract what spectrum of entity or spirit we can channel in?
I'll dive in real quick and let the other panelists go for it. It's about resonance. Where are you resonating? Where's your heart at? And what's the intention behind the desire to channel and connect with someone or something? That's where it's at. Resonance. You want to resonate, higher vibration. So higher mind, higher thoughts. Take it away.
Usually some channelings of the dark beings are related to the traditions or the cultures of the beings working with certain types of information. For example, in Africa, usually the divine is encoded and understood through the elements. So everything that is related to water, earth, air. So they have all the Eshus, which are the spirits of nature, and usually they vibrate very low. So for some people that are usually trying to find the spirit in heaven with the stars and so on, they tend to believe that the cultures like the African people that are channeling dark beings, but actually it's not. Actually, it's just another realm or level of information that they are much more used to work with than other people. So, for example, myself, I channel very dark beings, and that's why sometimes there are some videos of me channeling dark beings, and they say, "Oh, Matías is dark," and yeah, of course. So I have allowed some of them to talk because they have a lot of information, good information, because they they understand how the matter works. They understand how the structure of this reality has been created because they are dense. So some clues to understand how to handle this reality, only they know the high beings. So it's always good to understand that it's not about a war between beings that can be inside of us or channeling or whatever. It's all about data. When you summarize all information that goes through the universe as data, you will understand that there's some data that is needed to understand to complete some task in this ground, in this earth, and there are some data that connects us to the higher connections. So both are equally important to understand a whole, to understand information. Of course, we have to, if we want to stay in balance and with a high connection and try to find our truth, it's better to vibrate very high so that other information doesn't mix with us and take us down to the network of this ground, of this earth. So we can go higher in understanding. So it's all about where are you tuning at?
I'll just add a couple more things to build on that. Many of the traditions that I've learned about and personally practice have some type of protection type intention as part of their process to going into a channeling state. And then also working with a guide or spiritual guides or what's called a control. Myself and many channelers I know work very closely with a specific group or individual non-physical being that acts as a gate person, if you will, that supports the channeling process. And so that's just another kind of model that can support your channeling if you feel like that resonates with you, is establishing that, spirit guide or whatever you want to call it, who is your kind of main support person if you want to go down the trance channeling path.
We're nearing the end of our session, so I'm going to present two more questions. The first is to the entire panel, and it's from Dimitri. And Dimitri asks, is there any specific channeling experience or message that was special for you that you would like to share with us? And that's to everyone.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't know how to choose, to be honest. I wouldn't know how to choose because every moment where things have come to me, either in the context of a session or context of an illness or a low time or a high time in my life, they've had impact and meaning. And I think it just depends on where you're at. So I'm sorry, I can't give you, I could give you a lot verbatim, but I don't want to take that time up. It happens all the time. So just listen.
Anyone else, a special message or experience that you had connected with channeling that you'd like to share?
I mean, go ahead. No,
Jason.
Go.
Oh, sorry.
No, go, Helané.
Well, I would just, again, that question's like, there's so many amazing ones. But the one that I feel inspired to share in this moment, especially around this question of the future, so often the message comes through about the power of our visioning, of our intention, of our seeing what we want to manifest. And I've seen that play out so often in my own life. And that channeled message comes through over and over and over again. And I saw it actually in the chat kind of floated by. It's like, focus on what you want to create. What does it feel like in the future that you want? What is around you? And engaging all of your senses. And that channeled message comes through over and over again. It is my practice to try to remember that in my daily life too.
Mhm.
For me, yeah, it's related. Well, I've been sharing with everyone basically all the more important channelings that I have that I had and changed my life. So it's everywhere. But I think that what the channeling that really changed my life and point of view of everything was when I was concerned on doing a reconnection of the network with all the information that I have received since I was a child, and trying to do for years what I was channeling, like going to this place to connect this with that and do all that. And suddenly, when in 2020 the last information that I received was, now go home and wait for the earth to silence everyone. You have to send everyone to meditate at home. And I was like, what does it mean? And it says, you have only 1 month to do it. And 1 month later was the pandemic. So so when I received that information, they said, you have to go to Egypt. And for me, that was life-changing. And the main message of everything, the main channeling of everything was, you have to answer the I am. And the only answer to the I am is one question, which is who I am.
Mhm.
And so that changed everything for me. That was the special channeling that I received and that created all the project that I did these past years.
Mm.
So I think the question.
Yeah.
Beautifully put. Our final question is a natural for Jason. Kelly asks, what future topics regarding channeling will be explored in the series?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, we have right now we're scheduled for 10 episodes. So yeah, we cover some of my definitely influential texts that from history with Mitch. It was so fun going in with you and talking about the history of the channeling movement. I mean, we cover, I wanted to dive very deep in season 1, and my goal was to at least scratch the surface on so many different topics. So we really wanted to explore those questions of the higher self, the who am I channeling, is it extraterrestrials? A lot of these questions that you've asked today really are encapsulated in this series, and we get to really expound on, go out and really dive deep into some of these things. So I hope that answered your question. I know we don't have a lot of time, but please watch. I think we answer a lot of questions, I believe.
Well, a big thanks to the panelists and a very special thanks to all the viewers who joined us for this watch party. Your questions made this into a real exchange. You can visit Gaia.com to start a free trial. There are already 3 episodes of the channeling series up on Gaia. And as Jason was alluding, more coming, and it keeps getting better and better. So thank you all, the panelists and the viewers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.